Hey guys, today we're gonna be doing anaerobic respiration. In the last class, we did aerobic respiration. So we're just gonna pick up where we left from, okay? So, what's anaerobic respiration? So, our cells respire anaerobically when there is not enough oxygen, okay? When there is not an adequate supply of oxygen. Hence the name anaerobic. So I'm just gonna read this out loud for you guys. Glycolysis anaerobic respiration, glycolysis only, pyruvate is converted into other products without the presence of O2. Okay, no O2, hence the name anaerobic. Now, glycolysis only gives ATP. Now, um, in anaerobic respiration, the ATP that we get is solely from glycolysis. The fermentation itself doesn't give ATP, okay? It produces lactate, and if we're talking about yeast, is gonna be ethanol. We're gonna look into it shortly. Now, uh, anaerobic respiration can regenerate NAD plus, so ATP from glycolysis is made. Now, what does this mean? Everything is gonna make sense. Just let me read this out loud for you guys, and then I'll explain again. Well, I'm gonna read and explain at the same time. So, anaerobic respiration is basically the backup energy system. So, uh, you might be asking, which one is the like main energy system then? So that would be your aerobic respiration. Okay, it's like the backup engine. Okay, so not the main one. It starts during things, not things, just one sec. Starts during activities such as intense exercise when oxygen levels are low. The ATP yield is really low, okay? About 2 ATP per glucose molecule. Uh, it solely depends on glycolysis. Everything in and everything in anaerobic respiration comes from glycolysis. There is no Krebs cycle, there is no link reaction, and no oxidative phosphorylation. Okay, so ATP is like the what do you say? The main character here, or something like that. Never mind, that's too corny. Anyways, so the whole point of anaerobic respiration is not to make energy. It's just to regenerate NAD plus. Why? We're gonna talk about it briefly. So the whole point of anaerobic respiration is to regenerate NAD plus. During glycolysis, NAD NAD plus gets reduced to NADH, and without NAD plus, glycolysis would stop. So the cell converts NADH back into NAD plus, so glycolysis can keep running and ATP can still be produced. Okay? So the entire thing is just to like regenerate NAD plus. It's to like get rid of this H from NAD. So it's basically just oxidizing NADH again. So in us humans, the anaerobic respiration, the path that we follow or the process is specifically called um, lactic acid fermentation. Okay, in humans, pyruvate is converted into lactate. Lactic acid fermentation. It's called lactic acid fermentation. Okay. Oops. In yeast, however, pyruvate is converted to ethanol. This is an aldehyde and then ethanol is converted to ethanol. This is an alcohol. It's gonna release CO2 in the process, and it's called alcoholic fermentation. Uh, so you guys may have noticed, like when people make bread, they add yeast and they let it sit, and after some time the dough would it would puff up, like it would puff up with air. The reason why it puffs up is because of the CO2. The CO2 builds up, and it basically, like, the air pushes the dough outwards, creates pressure and all that. And fermentation is also used to make like alcoholic beverages. Okay, it's nothing new. Now, overall, anaerobic respiration is inefficient. Okay, but it is crucial because it allows ATP production to continue for short periods when oxygen is not available. So, um, yeah, that's it. Now we can just move on to the next point. Basically, we're just gonna zoom in further into the reactions. Okay, we're gonna zoom into lactic acid fermentation. So now, at first, wait. I wanna draw this for you guys. Wait, let me just make it. So we got the glucose here. Glucose gets turned into pyruvate. Pyruvate. This is basically glycolysis happening here. So here, we use 2 ATP. And remember, the net yield of glycolysis was 4 ATP. But since we used up 4, since we used up 2, we're just going to write it as 2. Okay. So, okay, maybe I should write it like this: 2 ADP plus 2 ATP. Doesn't really matter, but who cares? Now, if you remember correctly, uh, we also had dehydrogenation taking place in glycolysis. Okay, so dehydrogenation is gonna take place, and it's gonna make 2 NADH. Then now let's look into the anaerobic respiration. So now this is, by the way, the lactic acid fermentation. So we got an enzyme called lactate dehydrogenase. Dehydrogenase. Now, also you need to know the formula for pyruvate, C3H4O3. So O3. What's gonna happen is the lactate dehydrogenase is gonna dehydrate. It's gonna wait. It's gonna add 2 hydrogen. It's gonna to it's gonna add 2 hydrogen to the pyruvate with the sorry, the NAD. Wait, let me just draw it out. Okay, so lactate. This is lactate, and then C3H6O3. Oh my, O3. Now, see, we got like 2 plus 2 hydrogen here. We had like 4 here, but now we got 6. So where is this hydrogen coming from? And you might have guessed it, it's coming from here. The NADH comes, and in the presence of lactate dehydrogenase enzyme, it drops 2 hydrogen atoms. Okay, and it gets recycled into NAD plus, 2 NAD plus. Okay, and these hydrogen atoms are then gained by the pyruvate um, under the catalyst lactate dehydrogenase, and it produces lactate. All right. Now, this is the lactic acid fermentation. Now, let's look into alcohol fermentation. All right. So, for alcohol fermentation, alcohol ferment fermentation. Now, what's gonna happen here is the first process, the glycolysis part, is gonna remain as it is. So it's gonna be glucose. Glucose gets turned into pyruvate, 2 ATP, to ADP plus 2 ATP, 2 ATP. Now to NAD plus to NADH. Then it's gonna, the pyruvate, let me just write the chemical formula for pyruvate. So it's gonna be C3H4O3. Okay. Now it's gonna get decarboxylated under the enzyme pyruvate decarboxylase. Okay. You don't have to know that name, but yeah. So decarboxylation. So this produces CO2, right? And uh, there is only now, like, we got rid of one carbon. We're left with two carbons now. It's gonna form ethanol. Ethanol is CH3CHO. Okay. Now, here, as you can see, one hydrogen here, one hydrogen here. We got four hydrogen here. The ethanol is gonna get turned into ethanol, which is C2H5OH. Now we got five hydrogens, I mean six hydrogens, right? So plus two again. So as you guys could have, as you guys already guessed, like, the two hydrogens, they're coming from this NADH. Now, here, an enzyme called alcohol dehydrogenase is used. Now, this NADH comes, drops two hydrogen atoms, and it gets recycled into NAD plus, and the two hydrogen atoms attach to ethanol in the presence of alcohol dehydrogenase, and then it becomes ethanol. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now we're just gonna look into the key points that I wrote for you guys. Now, in lactic acid fermentation, the enzyme lactate dehydrogenase is used, while in yeast fermentation, uh, the enzyme, okay, in yeast fermentation, the enzyme alcohol dehydrogenase is used. In humans, lactate can build up and become toxic, okay, because hydrogen ions accumulate, which can lead to lactic acidosis, where the blood becomes more acidic due to excess lactic acid. All right. Because of this, lactate is later, okay, you have to know these points. These are like really important. Because of this, lactate is later broken down in the liver where it is converted back into pyruvate or glucose. This process is called gluconeogenesis. It is essentially the liver recycling the waste product of anaerobic respiration back to usable fuel source. All right. So lactate goes back to your liver. The liver breaks it down to pyruvate and glucose, so that it can be reused for, let's say, aerobic respiration again. Now, some interesting points I thought I should add. The brain is extremely sensitive to oxygen. Like your brain is really sensitive to oxygen. Okay, you're gonna pass out like if your oxygen levels drop. Uh, yeah. So it does not function well under anaerobic respiration. Okay, so sometimes you're gonna see that when people don't get enough oxygen to their brain, they start acting weird. Like they cannot like make decisions. Uh, in high altitude mountains, it is seen that the hikers or mountaineers, I don't know what you call them, I'm sorry, but they when they're like oxygen when they're in like an oxygen depth, they are kind of intellectually compromised. They cannot like think properly. They cannot like make decisions that properly, if that makes sense. It should though. Anyways, oxygen depth is a real thing where after intense exercise we breathe heavily. So why do we like breathe heavily after a run or whatever exercise? So it is so that we can like as it says, it's to repay the oxygen depth. The oxygen is basically used to like oxidize lactate. Okay. Also, the when you're exercising or doing something physically demanding, CO2 is gonna build up in your blood. Okay, so it's important that it gets exhaled, because uh, if too much CO2 accumulates, your blood becomes more acidic. Like there is a buffer system going on, so there's an equilibrium in your blood, so it's gonna move towards the acidic side. So it's important that you get rid of that excess CO2. Anyways, so oxygen depth is a real thing where after intense exercise we breathe heavily to remove excess CO2, oxidize lactate, and restore ATP levels. Now, restore ATP levels how? Because we're oxidizing lactate to like to convert it back to pyruvate and glucose. And what pyruvate and glucose does is they can undergo aerobic respiration, which makes a lot of ATP. So that's how uh, by breathing heavily we can restore our ATP levels. So if effectively repaying the oxygen depth. Anaerobic respiration is faster than aerobic respiration in terms of ATP production rate, but it is much less efficient overall. Also, by regenerating NAD+, it helps restore the redox balance of the cell. So basically, it's saying that NAD+, since it has a positive charge, and since NADH does not, NADH does not, so when there's a lack of NAD plus, there's gonna be a shortage of positive charge. It's gonna become slightly negative, right? So in our body, we need to like maintain the charge. We need to maintain the electrical gradient in our body. So NAD plus also does that.